Hi, it's been a while. My name is Zach, and today I want to talk about Hulk. Spoilers for Jekyll and Hyde, and I guess every Marvel movie and some comics, I think. I say Hulk 221 times in this video, including this mention. Hulk is a comic book character created and owned by Marvel Comics. He's one of the early guys, designed by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and because of the history of the character, he's gone through a lot of different interpretations and presentations. As a result, it can be hard to talk about him. This is trouble regarding a lot of comic characters. They've been around so long with so many disparate narratives that it feels like there's a continuity where they've done anything. If you're not a hyper nerd on the final steps of virginity before you gain your wizard powers, it can seriously feel like talking about comics incurs the smiting wrath of God upon your ears as you're assailed by spittled words about how, well, in universe 616166611, the character actually did something against what you're talking about. Then, you try to engage with them because you're healthy, so you say, oh, that sounds really cool, how do I read it? And the spindly little turd shrugs because he hasn't even read it, and then he says it's not good anyway. It's good to hurt these people. A lot of people have already made a lot of videos talking about how the character of Hulk that's popularly known in the movies is kinda lame, and I'm not like those people, I'm better. Most of the folks, as I see them, have pretty shallow analyses of the character with pretty mild criticism of their study, and occasionally they're just wrong, they're dumb. I'll say it. And while I won't mention these people by name, this isn't a response, I do want to give my own opinion, and if you disagree with me, go shin kick a pipe. Let's not dally further. I like Hulk, and I think you do too, even if you don't know much about him. Before Marvel was owned by Disney, back when we were still in the good timeline, Hulk was spoken of on playgrounds, not just geek shops, along the likes of Spider-Man and Wolverine. Sure, in the modern day, those other two are still extremely popular, but back in the day, Hulk was comparable. And that makes sense, because there's something so simple and obviously attractive about big guy hit big. Stan Lee said that Hulk was inspired by Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde. Now, that first one is pretty sensible on its aesthetic. This kind of stitched-together monster crafted in a lab with undertones of science gone wrong, gone too far beyond man's domain until we are hopelessly fettered by our small stature in its presence. But that latter one is really interesting to me. For those of you who don't know, Jekyll and Hyde is an important story. If you haven't read it, you might be surprised to hear from me that they aren't different people. Like, there is no Hyde, the bad one. Dr. Jekyll is himself, and he has these terrible urges that are so horrible that he decides it couldn't be his own. He's a man of good standing. No, these urges must be from something else. But, this is all cope, right? There is no Mr. Hyde. There is not a serum that actually does anything to switch his internal persona. That's all just the troubled reconciliation of a broken man's cognitive dissonance. The story regularly blends the two men with usage of pronouns like we or I when referring to the other alter, and I don't interpret this to be read as metaphor. I don't believe that you're to read that and then conclude, oh yes, the author's meaning to blend them together, to emphasize that this transformation is like Jekyll's responsibility. No, I think it clarifies that there's no transformation beyond the mildly physical and what Jekyll convinces himself of. Jekyll and Hyde isn't really about the transformation. It's more about how Victorian social morality is an unnatural and harmful thing, that these people pursuing totally normal and natural desires must inhibit themselves artificially for fear of losing social standing, and therefore end up, in their repression, worshipping the very sin they avoid. I grew up in the South, and you would hear public sermons somewhat frequently, on a college campus or what have you. I remember there was one where someone was talking about his struggles with lust. He mentioned that he struggled to avoid thinking about intimate body parts when talking with women. Or similarly, Steve Harvey, how about?
Yeah, we're friends. No, that's not true. He's your friend only because you have made it absolutely clear that nothing else is happening except this friendship we have. We remain your friends in hopes that one day there'll be a crack in the door, a chink in the armor. And trust and believe that guy that you think is just your buddy, he will slide in that crack the moment he gets the opportunity.
And you
Because
think
we're
most
guys.
men think this way?
99.9% of us think that way.
That there's always some additional social pressure somehow. Disgusting, right? It makes me wonder why they can't just, like, chill. You know, do you even view the other people as people, or are they like symbolic withholders of a sacred ritual to you? You're building this thing up into something that it doesn't need to be, and you're putting it onto a pedestal when it's just very normal. And in working so hard to make it special and sacred and suppressed, you accidentally push it into a place of unreasonable value. For how about a less gross example? You know, those who diet so intensely that they fantasize about a donut. You should never fantasize about a donut. It's a donut, dude. Eat it or don't, and stop thinking about it. There should never be a point in your life where your psyche is influenced by something so small. You're bigger than that. Read Jekyll and Hyde yourself. It's about as many words as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, although it's a lot harder to read. But back to the topic. See, Hulk isn't based on what I'm saying. No, he's instead based on the literal interpretation. Hulk is the Hyde to Bruce's Jekyll. But interestingly, put this analysis into your pocket for later, because contemporary Hulk comics converge toward what I'm saying here a bit. Hulk comics have been around for decades, so the character has undergone a bunch of incarnations, and despite that, I'm going to talk about the character as I know him, the character that I love with my interpretation. But I assure you, as I mentioned right at the start, there are comics that disagree. That's just how comics are. Sorry. Bruce Banner keeps a spruce manner, but lets loose Banner abuse him. Bruce Banner is a scientist and gamma researcher who gets exposed to gamma rays. Funny that. Usually, he's something of a quiet, reserved, but arrogant, nice guy. He saves Rick Jones during a test. No, that's Rick James. Get him off your couch. And while saving Rick Jones, he gets hit with all this gamma, and it turns him green. In real life, it wouldn't do that. You'd look like this guy. So now Bruce gets angry and turns into this monster. Or sometimes it's only like at night, or sometimes it's like the Hulk is fighting Banner, and if Banner sleeps or stops focusing, the Hulk comes out. Sometimes it's when Banner is just in any elevated state, not just angry, but anxious or scared. Look, we all know the story. Banner turns into a monster sometimes, except that's not true anymore. Contemporary comics have taken a far more interesting interpretation, and it's been this way for a few decades now. Let's start before the beginning. Brian was a smart kid who loved to learn. His father was abusive, and it instilled a lesson into Brian. This man was a monster. But what did that make him? Was there something genetic within himself, inherited from this creature? He grew into a scientist, and he married a woman named Rebecca. Abuse incarnate, narrative tool, not man. This violent drunkard beat his wife whenever he doesn't do worse. He's a monster. He states it openly, and he knows it better than anyone. He knows everything better than anyone. Or, well, he used to. He inherited the monster gene. To Brian, a literal thing. His observation of his part in hateful perpetuity. Brian became a scientist, but the stress broke him. Yet, a demon could call him a hero. He alone protects the world. He will never have a child. Would never pass along his monstrous nature. He fails. A man who pursues control his whole life, but never had a chance. It was an accident. All of it was an accident. The kid was always smart and always quiet. He tinkered with his toys and built new ones. He experimented with chemicals he could find household. He loved learning. He didn't hide these activities, but he was no show-off either. He played in the living room because that's where you play. Bruce may have saved his mother, finally, a light in her life. And Bruce's father hated him. Bruce wasn't just a freak, he was Brian's monster again. From the moment he laid eyes on his baby, Brian knew this thing would be like him, like his father. He held in his hands another recipient of the monster gene. He should have just strangled it there. That'd be the humane thing. That'd be the moral thing. It was just like him, and he hated himself most of all. But he was too weak. But to his credit, he does what he can to stay away. He's distant, because when he's close, he'll hit the thing. Bruce is raised mainly by his distressed but caring mother, who can't get out from under her oppressive husband's house. Rebecca is Bruce's only light. Brian smashes her head in until the light's gone. There's a trial. Bruce doesn't testify, but Brian gets sent away. Eventually they meet back up at Rebecca's grave. It was an accident. Something just came over him. Bruce smashes Brian's head against her stone. Hulk isn't a green monster that Bruce transforms into. There is no Hulk. It's all Banner. Not just Bruce, either. The monster gene is real, just not physical. A poisonous bomb tossed into your hands from someone too scared to hold it. It's terrifying, a monster in true meaning, bigger than you despite parasitizing your body as host, ever lurking at the edges of your emotions. Hulk kept Bruce alive, but not safe. When Bruce was too weak to survive the beatings, Hulk would take them. When Bruce broke into a whimpering mess, Hulk would put him to bed. When Bruce grew big enough, Hulk stopped the hurt. But let's not dwell only on the bad. It'd be easy to say that Bruce was just like his father, a scientific genius stressed to the brink and with violent repression. But the fact is that he isn't. Brian Banner was a tornado of a man, desperate for control and failing to find it. He thought he was the smartest person in the room, and he surely was astute, but he was nothing like his son. Bruce becomes a paragon of control, overcoming insurmountable challenge to assume such. Brian was a genius, but Bruce is a genius among the genius. Brian thought he was the smartest man in the room, but Bruce is looked to for his advice in any room other than wherever Mr. Fantastic is. And to be fair, Mr. Fantastic fits into a lot of rooms. Oh, and Dr. Doom's smarter than him too. Bruce didn't slip up. There were no accidents. And an achievement greater than anything Brian could ever imagine, Bruce really did find love. He made himself, despite the damage, into someone you should be proud of. But Hulk is within him. There is an unyielding rage within himself, and a vengeful ambition, and yet a brittle frailty. The gamma rays did one thing. They gave Bruce the power to become bigger and stronger and greener. The Hulk is separate from the gamma, sure, but let's not delude ourselves. The gamma gives the monster shape. And let's not forget that the Hulk is a man. There's jealousy here, a hatred of puny Banner. Hulk always hurts. Whether it's to fight a monster or protect puny Banner, Hulk is the one forced to the surface. Bruce isn't getting his ribs kicked in, and Bruce isn't the one making the decision. Hulk must, because Hulk has no one else. Hulk always hurts. This is why Hulk and Bruce are opposed. Hulk is a mindless monster to Bruce. Weirdly, Bruce's perception of Hulk parallels his father's view of him. But Bruce is a frail abuser to Hulk, who commands Hulk to take responsibilities that should be his own. Hulk wants to be left alone, be isolated, at peace, and you may wonder why Bruce wouldn't want that. Well, in some incarnations he does. They are aligned in that purpose, but when they are, well, that kind of terminates the tension of the story. Usually Bruce can't help himself. It's like a toxic trait. Bruce wants to help people. He does have a gift for science and creation. He wants a life, and he believes he almost had it until that bomb. He doesn't realize that the bomb did nothing to change the turmoil within himself. If you like what I've discussed here, consider reading some of the recent Hulk comics. Immortal Hulk was really good. I liked that. Oh, but it's pretty gory, very horrific art. I loved it. And that story does a good job, I think, of recontextualizing the older aspects of Hulk's character. It juggles, in early comics, there were different Hulks and they had different colors and personalities, and it combines them into a grander metaphor about hatred, destruction, and abuse. The problem is, honestly, that it was too good. It's kind of redefined Hulk in the modern comics. And a lot of what I loved about Immortal Hulk, I interpreted metaphorically, but they've been translated into very literal things now. Hulk's a devil now. He works with, anti-god or something. It's a bit lame to me. You might also wonder then, what's up with all the Hulks? Not Banner's different aspects, not Joe Fixit or Savage or Green Scar or Guilt or whatever. No, we're talking the other, like, Hulk people. Like, there's a Red Hulk, a She-Hulk, a Red She-Hulk, Abomination, Leader, Gargoyle. That last one's a real guy. I didn't make him up, but we won't talk about him because he does weaken some of my later arguments. Don't look him up. These other people didn't have a Hulk within their psyches. Nah, they're just a bunch of delinquents, right? Abomination can't revert to a human form in the comics. So he's a big villain because he can't have a normal life. Red Hulk is a warmonger and a hateful, violent man who's finally given the ability to be a weapon and take back a life that's been stripped from himself. These people don't have monsters within them. They're fully lucid when they transform. They are the monster. It's just Bruce who's got another guy. In fact, he's got a whole system, a veritable Congress kicking around in his noggin. And that's all pretty cool then. Let's talk about the MCU. Oh my god! What are you doing? What did you do? Let's define the MCU. It stands for Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it refers to the movies. You know, the movies, the ones you're thinking of. It's been said that the MCU Hulk is a mismanaged character, but this isn't quite accurate, as you'll see. There's no character to mismanage. This Hulk is an entirely different direction for the character. It's a more classic interpretation, aligned better with the older comics, yet sanitized to remove the abuse aspects from Bruce. You know, the good part, the complexity. If you remember back to the fledgling MCU days, you'll recall how big a hit Iron Man was. It was so big, they pretty quickly threw together a less beloved sequel. But don't forget the MCU movie that snuck between those two Iron Mans, Hulk. I wish I could sneak between two Iron Mans. The Incredible Hulk seems out of place to a modern audience, but when you recall how popular Hulk was in the past, it makes more sense why he'd be a frontrunner. In 2008, we get the first appearance of Hulk in the MCU. I want to emphasize that what you're about to hear is unusual. And this next part is similarly unusual. See, the 2008 movie called The Incredible Hulk is canon. For you non-Catholics, that means it's included within the books of the Bible. Oh no, what? It means it's considered to have happened in the main continuity of the Marvel movies. Yes, I know it looks completely different. Yes, I know it has a different tone. Yes, this guy doesn't look like this guy, and this Hulk looks different from the Hulk. I know. They ditched the thing with the watch. They even changed the personality of the character. I know. But the movies that come later talk about stuff that happens in this movie. Like, this movie happened, and then they talk about it later on. So I know it's weird. So sorry. This guy is this guy. I know it's weird, but they've done it with other characters too. But you were too racist to notice. This 2008 movie was in part inspired by the 2003 movie, and it's not a direct sequel, but it does assume an audience that knew the character already established. As a result, it repeats motifs that we dropped later. They don't matter, but they were started earlier. You know, the watch that tracks your heart rate. Whoa, dude, you're full on sprinting. How are you under 180? Man's, oh my god, cardio's crazy. I get winded talking to my wife, but that's because I'm trying to hide my crippling Chikawa merchandise addiction from her. I'm not getting into it. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with this movie. There were rewrites being leveraged by big names. Some people say that Ed Norton made the rewrites that make the movie worse, but I don't think that's true. He didn't get a writing credit for any changes, so they couldn't have been significant. Otherwise, the guilds would have been extremely uppity about it. They care about that. So I don't know the drama or if it even matters. Anyway, I care more about the results. So the movie that we got is a little lame. Interviews explain that one goal was to start a Hulk franchise. Yeah, I'm serious. They said that. The director described that his view of the character was a kind of wish fulfillment. The idea of a victim overpowering his bully, tapping into an unknown strength to overcome injustice. Hulk is retribution. He smashes the military that hurts him, in the end, defeating the monster they made to save them from their own mistake. He's a hero, but he's reactive. He just wants to be left alone, only ever striking out of pain. Simple, safe story. A fine, tame beginning to the wild character. In early scenes, he's a monster cloaked in shadow with glowing green eyes. He snuffs out his enemies not in a fight, but like a horror movie monster. The first scene of Hulk is in an industrial factory where machinery screeches when he sends it flying across the room. Sparks spray from steel on concrete. Guns do nothing. You hear a throbbing, breathing from angry nostrils like a barely restrained bull. He moves too fast for something the size of freight, and he warps railing like wire when he charges. Later, Hulk is shown in full lighting, but he keeps a dark green palette to his skin and hair. He feels dirty, grimy, with muscles so defined you want to sip water just looking at him. The man's dehydrated like Valjean in prison. Don't sing like that, it'll hurt your throat. These deep, shadowy lines carved across his muscles, all over his body, they feel gross, like they're embedded with dirt and sweat, and more than that, he's like really green. This sounds so dumb to say, but he's like too green. I know he's literally radioactive, but he's radiantly green, neon green. It's too much. I'm distracted. The movie's point is that Hulk is gross and bad. And when Hulk is utilized, it's always a scary thing. Maybe not always a bad thing, usually it's bad, but it is definitely scary. It's a power you can't rely on. It's untamed. Yes, Hulk displays heroic desire to protect Betty, but that's about as close as we come to him being conventionally heroic. Now, is the movie good? No. But is the Hulk character well established? Yeah. Yeah. This is not the worst MCU movie, even if it's pretty low on the list. And important to our study, it succeeds in establishing Hulk. And that's by far the most critical goal. It explores very little, but it does give us a strong foundation for future exploration. The next appearance of Hulk is in 2012's Avengers. Ed Norton's a diva, so they replaced him with Mark Ruffalo. Yeah, they would rather have a bad actor they can work with than a good one they can't. Honestly, that's reasonable. I'm not even really being joking about that. I also don't actually want to complain about Ruffalo too much. I wrote this before, but he has since proven that he is based as fuck. So he's cool with me. But in terms of acting talent, I don't think he's very good. I want to be clear on that. Although I haven't yet seen I Know This Much Is True, which I think is his best performance. People tell me it's his best performance. But then I'd have to watch his movies instead of Chikawa, so I'm a little torn. Finally, I get to talk about MCU's Bruce Banner. So, in the last movie, he was nothing. Nothing? Just a guy scared of his power. He was reserved and panicked, like a caged animal, which is fine, but there's just not much to go off of. No, here he matters. This is a man tormented by a ghost who haunts him. He recuses himself to India, where he lives as far as he can from others without being totally off-grid, so he can survive. He makes money as a doctor. The scene where they recruit him to the team is tense but restrained. In this moment, we meet a cunning Banner. Not just academically smart, but viciously, emotionally calculating. Manipulative? He sees a spy and assumes they're back to try to kill him again. He warns her she'll fail. He isn't threatening. If anything, he's annoyed that they're going to commit suicide by Hulk against his advice. I use that word intentionally, advice. He's letting you know what's going to happen, and he knows better than you. This delivery is important. He's tired. He hovers at the threshold of rage, repressing frustration, and he's expressive of that. We know this is dangerous. He's a bomb, and he doesn't seem to be trying that hard to remind us he's more than that. Notably, Banner here is referring to Hulk as separate from him. Banner is asked to join the team, not Hulk. When told that there's this dangerous artifact, he assumes they're asking him to use Hulk to contain it, but he's surprised when they counter, no, they need Gamma expert Banner, not his concomitant monster. He responds with skepticism. They're asking him to willingly go to a military organization. This is an obvious trap. In this scene, Banner is clear. Nobody wants him, not himself, and not them. He doesn't want to be bothered because he doesn't want to let Hulk destroy, and he doesn't want stupid people to put themselves in a situation where he'd destroy them. Black Widow repeats the plan. They need Banner's help, no tricks.
Stop lying to me!
Banner screams angrily, and we see that he needed a reaction. Stop Lying to me has meaning. He doesn't actually care that Black Widow is feeding him a persuasion attempt. He cares that they've sent a professional spy to give him non-reaction. This is a man who wants to be punished, isolates himself, and gets upset when people bother him because it puts them in danger, not him. He doesn't think they'll succeed in putting him into a cage. He just doesn't want them even to try. Above all, he hates when people won't take the Hulk seriously. That's how they get hurt. Don't call it nothing. It's a monster. He's a monster. But Bruce wants to help. We see that now. In this moment, he was always in control, and always would join if they wouldn't use Hulk. He needed them to understand that there's no threat to him. They shouldn't even try it. But on another level, he needs to see someone scared of him. He needs the validation, both to satisfy his concern that they'd try something stupid, and also to satisfy his own self-hatred. And he sees it. Black Widow is scared. Finally, we see it behind eyes trained to hold still as stone. And it humanizes her, makes us feel empathy for her as an audience, that this badass assassin who's as rad as asking about a sad bass in Azkaban is still extremely vulnerable against an unstoppable monster. Not only that, but Banner is dangerous too, manipulative and astute, extremely practiced in reading people, because when he isn't, Hulk could kill someone. Further, and I'm stretching here, a fan of Black Widow could come away from this scene with more respect for her character. Consider how she, in later scenes, remains composed despite being in actual danger from the Hulk. Not just the threat of him, his actual presence and rampage. She's focused, she's all business. And it makes you wonder if her expression of fear here is intentional. Maybe she identified all the same things I just did, and she did it in the moment, faster, and gave Bruce what he wanted. She pretended to be afraid because she saw he needed that from her. Maybe not, I don't know. I'm not a big Black Widow fan. But I like this Banner. And this tension remains throughout the early parts of the movie. There's fear around Hulk. Sure, Iron Man doesn't seem to care that much, but he's Iron Man. He's allowed to be flippant, because that's exciting. He supports Banner using Hulk, and that's refreshing to have acceptance of power. He views Hulk as a power, not a curse, but everyone else views Banner as someone to be careful around. And this fits with Iron Man's character, too. Tony's a weapons manufacturer who pivots into generating energy for humanitarian effort. The technology that once killed civilians and fueled wars is now repurposed into an armor that protects. It saves his own life. Of course he'd believe Hulk can be wielded for good. So when Hulk first transforms, things get different. The character literally falls down into darkness. We don't see him in the same even lighting that we've had prior to this point on the helicarrier. Who does he fall with? Natasha, the same vulnerable human we've already empathized with. And what's different this time? This time, Banner's in danger. Before, he was angry, but this time, the ship's being attacked, and Bruce has fallen. He could die. He could be hurt. Maybe he already has. That was a long fall. Did he break something?
Your life!
When Hulk comes out, it's grotesque. Banner cries in pain, tries to stay still and breathe, but he can't stay stable from the careening skyship. You hear ripping, you hear bones cracking, he's thrown around. Black Widow tries calling out, talk him through, but Banner screams at her. It isn't the rage, she doesn't get it. She can't. Nobody knows. Like Bruce does. All of this compounds. And what do we get? Once the change is unstoppable, inevitable, we see a shot where Banner's eyes look back in fear and sadness behind Hulk's face. Also notable, Black Widow is more focused on calming Bruce down than she is on rescuing herself, until that scene where we see Bruce's eyes. And this is kind of neat to me. Like I just said, nobody understands Hulk like Banner, but here we actually see Natasha doesn't really commit to cutting and running until after she's already seen Banner's lost his fight against his monster. And like I said, Hulk is a monster here. Rising in shadow, he smashes through pipes, spewing steam, and crashes through light, shattering to spark showers. The room is paper to him, shredding like a football team running through their banner. Oh, wait! Oh, that's like parallelism. He pursues Black Widow. Why? Well, she's no target. He's just lashing out at anything or anyone that could hurt him. Much later, in another scene, Iron Man has a problem. There's a big monster chasing him, and nobody can deal with it comfortably. Sure, there's probably something they can improvise, but for now the team's regrouping to strategize, so Stark just leads the monster on a big chase through the city. Banner rolls up on a bike, not transformed, he's on a bike. Captain America calls Iron Man on the comms to tell him Banner's here. This informs Stark that he's untransformed, since otherwise Cap would have said Hulk. But no, he says Banner. Iron Man tells him to suit up. This isn't the time for a wimpy Banner. And Banner looks around at a city in ruin. And can you just imagine how freeing that must be? Look around. What can Hulk make worse? Finally, Hulk is the solution. This is the only time for a monster. No innocents around, only invaders to kill. There isn't even a city to destroy anymore. It's already been ravaged. Hulk solves all the problems. There's this massive monster that nobody can stop without dedicated massive effort and resource. The scene is a raw, unfiltered injection of power fantasy for Hulk fans, where every possible barricade has been removed and Hulk can finally smash. But they still find a chance to develop the character. Cap tells Banner to get angry, and with a coy smile on his face, Banner finally shares his perspective.
That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
Goosebumps. I love it. I'm really just a kid at heart. This scene recontextualizes Banner's character throughout the movie. I've already been mentioning it, so maybe you haven't had this experience if I'm the one refreshing you, but these movies, they don't really make it very clear before that Banner is frustrated at the misunderstanding of him. All the times before, I said he was upset because they thought he was angry or he felt isolated. Well, the movie hasn't made this explicit, right? It's only now that it's clarified. Hulk is not what happens when Bruce is angry. He's already got the anger. No, Hulk is what happens whenever Banner stops fighting. It's not the anger. He's always angry. And if you're dumb, you might complain that this doesn't make sense, You might say, what do you mean you're always angry? Shouldn't you always be Hulk then? And honestly, it's embarrassing. If you've said that, go to timeout right now and think about what you did. I can't imagine watching a movie where you make an assumption about a character whose whole deal is being victimized by assumption, and then complaining at a perceived inconsistency when the movie tells you that your assumption is wrong. I'm not naming names. I actually saw a majority of people sharing this criticism when I researched MCU Hulk character analyses in preparation for this video. And every single one made me feel actually pretty happy for them. Like, if you're missing this basic stuff, most movies are probably really awesome for you. And honestly, that's got to be a great experience. I know it sounds like I'm dunking, but genuinely, you're happier than I am. It's also genuinely, it's good and healthy for you to exercise your brain by thinking about these things. I'd like it if you took it a bit farther next time. Instead of asking a question and being annoyed, I suggest trying to consider which possible interpretations maybe resolve your questions instead, then weighing each of the proposed answers by their merit using in-text evidence. That's ideal, but, you got to start somewhere. And it sucks to ruin movies the way I do, so maybe don't. I don't know. Anyway, this is perhaps the best scene for both the characters of Hulk and Banner, so to think it's bad is just baffling to me. And it even develops Iron Man and Black Widow a little, using what we already know of Captain America. That's efficient. This is the last of the good things that I'll say. In Age of Ultron, Banner has been accepted by the team. He's going on missions with them. Hulk, by extension, fights as an Avenger. He's not peripheral. He's a core member. At one point, Scarlet Witch, before she becomes a good girl, oh, no. She manipulates Banner's mind to drive Hulk into a frenzy, and Iron Man dons an ultimate suit of armor, the Hulk Buster, and barely manages to quell the monster. Their fight destroys part of a city, and much like the very hungry caterpillar, Hulk still wants more until he looks around at the frightened faces of people around him. I'm pretty sure that also stopped the caterpillar. It's been a while since I've read that one. Now, I didn't mention it before in my analysis of the comic Hulk, but Hulk's efficacy is crucial to the character. Unlike someone, say Daredevil, whom we can watch fail and still enjoy, Hulk really needs to be threatening. If Hulk can be restrained, beaten into submission by Iron Man alone, then he isn't really a monster, is he? He can't rampage. There's no monstrosity. There's no risk to his presence. Hulk shouldn't be heroic like the others. He's an aimless weapon. Sure, he wants to protect people, but people hurt him, and so he ends up destroying innocent lives. He's a reactive, dangerous monster. This film defangs him, but it also kind of has to, right? He's an Avenger, one of the gang now. We need him to be reliable. The problem is that the fun of Hulk's character is somewhat opposed in this role. And I think it's truly cowardly that we don't see Hulk kill anyone. He flips a security truck over top police with no injuries. Show me repercussions. Show me consequences. And while you're at it, show me next week's winning lottery numbers. That'd really hit the spot right about now. And at the end of the movie, we get reconciliation. Hulk helps save the day, but it's clear he remembers those frightened faces. Instead of returning, Hulk flies away to seclusion. Banner and Hulk found the acceptance they needed, but realized it couldn't last. Hulk leaves. Banner doesn't choose, but we can imagine he wouldn't protest too much. Even though Hulk isn't getting his own movies, it'd still be weird for him to get more than a few moments in a film with this wide cast. This is really Wanda's and maybe Vision's movie, with some Tony and Cap in there building into Civil War. Which Hulk isn't in. Instead, we get the weird Thor Ragnarok, where Hulk and Thor have a side adventure. Sure, that can work. I mean, they are the two heavy hitters of the Avengers, so relegating them into their own story lets you treat Hulk with more gravitas. If there ever were a setting for Hulk to struggle in, it'd be this one, where you have gods and aliens and big stuff in play. And plus, I mean, if these guys were in Civil War, they'd, win it. And in this film, Hulk has been the dominant personality for a long time. The timeline is fuzzy, not just because there's stuff happening in other dimensions, but it's been 2 years at least. And during this time, Banner is repressed. Hulk has been transformed since he arrived, and now he's a champion fighter, treated as celebrity, the Emperor's personal prize fighter. And he's happy to stay this way forever. And while he's here, he's aged somewhat. The Hulk, previously a dumb, brute monster, he's now more like a toddler. He speaks somewhat clearly. It's like he's aged. This is an interesting development, the idea that Hulk is a true separate mind. He even grows on his own under his own limits. And this reframes the dynamic between Bruce and Hulk into a more paternal experience. But remember that the MCU has done nothing with comic Bruce's abusive upbringing. No mention, nothing. So this intrigue is left unstated. Hulk fights a big monster. He seems excited to do so, but it's just not really important to anything in this movie. He's really relegated to comedy. And that's fine. Superheroes are allowed to be goofy. Some of my favorite memories of characters are when they're serious, but also when they're allowed levity, acting like a real person. Venom is an absolute hater who will kill Spider-Man or his daughter if given the chance, but he's also very self-aware about his simplistic perspective and villainous goals, and he can be a real goofball while simultaneously being a real deadly threat. In a vacuum, I don't hate the idea of Hulk taking a movie off to be comic relief while priming audiences to expect Hulk to be more toddler-like in future movies. That's okay with me, in concept, but I think this direction falters as it's executed. In the next film, Infinity War, Hulk develops a kind of fear. Thanos, the film's antagonist, as well as the most important character in the MCU to date, other than maybe Iron Man, he defeats Hulk in a fistfight to prove himself a valid threat. Off-screen, Thanos has already defeated the gods of Asgard, he's incapacitated Thor, he's killing Loki. This is an important scene with real weight. After all, Loki had never quite had his character resolved, despite dancing with the possibility for a few movies. Quite a few people loved the character of Loki, and were excited at his potential, and yet, Here he dies, pathetic. The sting is dulled later when he gets his own TV show, but the show's good, so that's forgivable. Our Loki dies, and, if you're a fan of Loki, a part of you is still saddened by this tragedy. This isn't our Loki. This is what our Loki also could have had, and that's a bit bittersweet. Hulk, though, is dispatched without grace, and afterward refuses to be conjured by Bruce Banner's rage. It literally refuses. But even this scene is played for laughs.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
I'm sorry,
And later we see Bruce Banner, a human, piloting the Hulkbuster armor, and that's neat. For an action movie, that is cool, but just feels a little hollow. Where are the scenes with Bruce struggling without his Hulk? Show me the scenes of other characters worried about Bruce. Hulk is a part of him, a tool, an other half. It's his powers, all of these in one, Why is no one concerned? Why is no one interested in this problem or cure? Show us perspectives on this, make it complicated. But the movie doesn't care. The heroes are defeated in Infinity War, and Thanos successfully enacts his plan. He instantly disintegrates half of all people in the universe because he's a madman who failed to process the horrors of war and has instead chosen to spite life while pretending that he's instructing it with a grand lesson on how we should be more grateful. He's a grandiose victim who grew strong so that he never needed to be hurt again, and then convinced himself that instead of life being cruel and chaotic, it must have some underlying order that has been lost to excess and luxury. I don't even like Thanos. He's dumb, and other characters are dumb for not pointing out that he's dumb. In Endgame, it's revealed that Bruce Banner has off-screen reconciled with the Hulk. This isn't Hulk. This is Hunk. Oh my god. He arrived to change everything on the tier list of hot people in the MCU. That is, Bruce has gone on a journey of self-discovery and can now retain his personality while transformed. He's the Hulk all the time. Comic fans call this Professor Hulk because that's clearly the comic version which inspired this interpretation. He's also sometimes called Smart Hulk because he's actually pretty different from the comics Professor Hulk. And at a glance, this seems like the kind of usual improvement to a character the MCU makes. Consider Iron Man. It's fun to watch a character develop over movies. Iron Man develops his suits to fix weaknesses as they're exploited. In the first appearance, it's a major plot point to de-ice his models. In Iron Man 2, he's overpowered by Electric Whip, yet in the next film of Avengers, we see that Thor's lightning is instead now absorbed by the later model, supercharging it. We see Tony attempt a gambit, nearly killing him, where his armor flies onto his body altogether and narrowly saves him from death. Yet, in his next appearance, he's improved this feature so that each individual piece of the armor can independently find him. By Infinity War, the armor is made of nanobots, covering him rapidly, which can reform into areas of reinforcement. Yet we also see Thanos blast these away while he's shielding himself until he's left with a minimal amount, barely managing to rearrange his shapes into a combination able to wound his foe. Finally, in Endgame...
What do you mean finally? Where's Tony in the other
we
movie?
see he's changed away from nanobots into energy projections. These aren't blasted away like before. Instead, they shatter when overloaded and reform entirely. He can keep his suit and have it too. So from this lens, we understand what's so neat and exciting about progression in our movies. We like seeing heroes develop and grow, learning from the past and impressing us with new technologies. And it affords the writers liberties. We don't feel cheated when Iron Man appears with a new toy. We've already acclimated to the idea of him making these background improvements. But for the MCU Hulk, his growth is different in a few key ways. Hulk's development is comedic. When he shows up, it's because he's mastered inner peace. Do you know how hard that is? He made a binder on it. Kung Fu Panda took 2 movies to do the same, and Poe's the chosen one. We are robbed of this very interesting plot and development and breakthrough that would be required of this. Hulk just shows up and now he talks like a toddler. Hulk just shows up and he has a son. I didn't make that one up. I'm not explaining it. I don't want to. Using this growth as a punchline, it undercuts the serious mental anguish previously so interesting to Hulk. this humor feels at the expense of an attentive audience who cares. Further, Hulk's growth is what's exciting about the character, whereas Iron Man's excitement comes from his application of the growth. When Hulk grows, usually he just punches harder, or maybe he cooperates more, and these aren't particularly engaging results. Iron Man showing off a new flashy light, well, that's neat enough to tide us over. So when you deny us Hulk's growth and just show the results only, it's a less interesting product. And that's fine for other characters. For Iron Man, it's very efficient, but for Hulk, it's a misstep. The payoff is that he punches. Look, we all know at the end of the movie, Hulk's gonna hit the guy really hard. What makes his stuff good or bad is whether or not we watched Bruce and Hulk feel better about the punching. Hulk is really fun because of the character drama he provides. And here's the thing, he's a bit exhausting, isn't he? You, listener, you might think this is really cool, but I'm writing this script. I've read so much. I'm tired. I've been sad and angry for months now, and it's just too much. I don't like dealing with it for too long. I'm actually a very fun and happy and awesome person, and I don't actually like being a sourpuss all the time. I know you won't believe me, but this is perfect for the MCU, a beautiful change of pace. Imagine how interesting a Hulk plot would be to break up the rhythm of these Marvel films. People loved the new Fantastic Four film. It was so different and somber with this weird retro-futuristic atmosphere with a new family dynamic. People like different. Comics don't all have to be action films. Let Hulk show up, be sad and terrible, and then move on. When we see him again, we'll know his baggage, and it'll elevate the scenes he's in. Consider how nuanced the Endgame Hulk would have been for audiences if first there were a standalone film that showed Banner reconcile with his trauma of his abusive father, confront the Hulk. Then, when we see him dab and all that dumb stuff, well, there'd be a little more to our eye rolling. We'd have empathy for someone. Hulk would have been through so much, and he isn't just laughing. He's being laughed at, laughed with, and he's comfortable with that. There's something there, I think. This video is really trying to lead to one final conclusion. I think there's something even worse about the MCU Hulk than the things I've said. Something that really makes me sad. Not only is the Hulk of these recent movies uninteresting when compared to his comics, I don't really think we can fix it. Throughout the MCU, there are great changes made to characters, adapting them for the new audience. The Iron Man of the MCU is different from his comics quite severely. The Thor of the MCU is far more jovial, and his grandiose Nordic heroic adventure aspects are toned down massively. In the comics, Thor is a warrior king who speaks like Shakespeare and who commands his people and the sky itself as if he were a captain of a vessel. The MCU Thor is far more insecure, far more relatable to a typical modern person. The Spider-Man of the MCU adapts countless qualities from several different Spider-Men, and it positions him as a naive apprentice. I like the MCU Spider-Man, but he is so different from the Peter Parker that I love from my comics, and that's fine. But importantly, the MCU writers are informed by the comics. When Spider-Man lifts the debris off him, it's clearly inspired by If This Be My Destiny. Oh, the Civil War film is inspired by the comics, but it's a lot better because the comic is bad. The point that I'm making is that the MCU is informed by the comics, and they're very willing to make changes to fit these reinterpretations. And that's fine, and that's already happened with Hulk. There's contention as to which is the best Hulk comic, but a widely praised one is Planet Hulk. In this plot, Hulk is proven to be dangerous, and so he's tricked, sent on a false flag mission into space that ejects him from our solar system. He's routed toward a peaceful, deserted planet, but accidentally sent crashing into the war-torn Sakaar, where he becomes a Spartacus-style slave revolutionary. The story is exclusively a Hulk one, no Banner save for a few panels. It develops his character as someone finally given purpose. Just like the MCU's ruined city scene in Avengers I mentioned before, here, Hulk can be a hero. In this place where destruction is natural and everywhere you look is oppression, well, there's nothing wrong with violence here. The story also clarifies the problem with this primitive power morality. Korg, and Meek are his warband brothers, and Meek's reluctance to relinquish his path of violence and hatred causes a terrible tragedy. The comic is an observation of Hulk's nature, of what it can bring in the right environment, but also a scathing observation of its limitations once it comes time to rebuild. Yet, it's hopeful. It considers the outlook a positive one, as if the Hulk has lessons to learn and the capacity to become a proper leader of a new world. And we've already cannibalized this plot for the MCU. Just not for Hulk. Instead, it's Thor Ragnarok. These themes are almost present for Hulk, but they've been so diluted behind comedic toddler tantrums that there's just nothing here left. The comic has this brutal dictatorship and doomed love and unstable peace, and the movie trades it all for Jeff Goldblum. Thor is the liberator, and even then, not really. The movie's more so about Asgard. Let's talk more about Hulk's villains. So every hero's villains are a dark reflection upon you. Abomination is a terrible figure, warped by the same gamma that mutates Banner, but literally his shadow. Abomination is mutated by the radiation emitted by Hulk. Comics Abomination is similar to Hulk, but lacks his trauma. See, Blonsky was already a freak, but he was no monster. An egomaniacal soldier seeking power and violence, his soul was already disgusting, but not out of any survival necessity. When he mutates, he remains mutated. He is forever, physically, an abomination, at least in the comics. But when we see him again in the She-Hulk MCU show, well, they use him more as a legal intrigue, which is fine. And they push a different angle, where he's like a social cult leader, sorta. He's a joke, and he can revert his form, because that's just what Hulks do. In the comics, Abomination's a recurring Hulk villain because he's just a pure, vile hater. He's a bully, and Hulk exists to protect Banner from bullies. But the films, the show, they reinterpret this character to fit better with She-Hulk, straying from Bruce. General Ross was already an antagonist to Bruce Banner, seeking to bring in this monster who had romantic ties to his daughter Betty. And the Red Hulk is cunning and intelligent, retaining the General's mind, but he leans more into the idea of the monstrous transformation as being triggered by radiation. Just like in Shin Godzilla, when they really lean into the horror, the radiation, the heat, the pain, the fire. Red Hulk absorbs energy and can shoot energy from his eyes, and he emits a burning flame. It intensifies as he enrages further and can absorb not just Hulk's gamma, but even Silver Surfer's power cosmic. But Red Hulk is self-destructive in this composition. While he is rational and driven and focused in his fury, he shows that he burns away at his very being by doing so. As strange as it seems, Hulk is defensive, reactive in nature, responding to wrongs inflicted upon him. When his rage fuels him toward aggression and action, it feasts upon his humanity. Red Hulk fights to kill so that he can hold all the pieces of his life that he's simultaneously pushed away. And the tragic irony is that by doing so, he assures his isolation. Ross loses everything. Not you, Ross, the one watching this now. I'm talking about Thunderbolt Ross. Yes, that's his name. I like the MCU Red Hulk, and that's a shame, because he wasn't in a Hulk film. These themes are great. The character is the best part of the movie he's in. The movie was pretty mid, to be fair. And it just feels a little wasted on the character of Falcon, whose themes are relevant, but less relevant. You know, the movie does what it can, and it does fine in adapting these themes to fit its arc better, but the result is tepid compared to how it could have been. See, Falcon in the MCU is a man struggling in the shadow of someone great, and who knows that he lacks the qualities that made that original so righteous. Yet now, there's no more shield for him to wait behind. It's his turn, and he must be ready. Compare this to the MCU Red Hulk, who is juggling every falling piece of his life, his empire, his future, and believes that if he can just have a bit more control, then he can fix it all. He knows he can do it, he just needs a bit more. Power, time, resources, people, control. He's the self-rationalizing, power-hungry abuser who can only just barely realize what he's doing before his panic compels him to shut away the thought. Falcon is a good foil, but why not Hulk? Yes, Red Hulk believes he has the power to fix things, and that he should let his power trickle down beneath him to order the problems around him, contrasting against Falcon's belief instead that power is legitimized in the reverse direction by the people below you who become inspired and grow from their belief in you, thus supporting you further. Sure, but wouldn't it be still great to see Hulk thrown in there too? Hulk, you know, the guy who grapples with the idea that the power he has is something that should be suppressed and mastered and wielded with delicate rarity. You know, Hulk hates his power and his representation, and yet here stand two men who both want their power, who both want representation, and yet they only disagree in how to use it. Hulk doesn't even want it at all, and I think that's just interesting. I think that could have been interesting. She-Hulk really hurt me. None of that, thank you! Not because the show's bad, which it is, mind you, it's bad, but because it cements the Hulk problem. Earlier in the show, Bruce Banner's Hulk blood infects an open wound in his cousin Jennifer Walters. There's a brief rampage, the initial panic sets in, but not long after, we arrive in a new area. Here, Banner has mastered himself and assumed a Hulk form indefinitely, and he's created a binder that tracked his journey of self-discovery and personal understanding. He knows how hard it is to suffer with the condition, and he wants to help his cousin. And I think a part of him wants someone to connect with him, share in his unique experience. Jennifer doesn't do this. Jennifer's her own person, completely disconnected from Bruce's struggle. Jennifer doesn't have a monster like Bruce did. She remains fully herself when she hulks out. It's something she has more control over. Sure, when she's angry or excited, she transforms, but it's far more within her grasp from the start than it was with Bruce. And the show does fine trying to attach this quality to other aspects of the character. At first, the two misunderstand her ability. Jennifer assumes she's just already in control of her emotions. You know, she has to control herself at frequent harassment. But she only thinks this because she doesn't know what Bruce has been through when she believed this. It's later clarified that Bruce didn't have that experience at all. That Jennifer isn't specially emotionally disciplined. No, Bruce is the one who's special. Bruce has the other guy. And Jennifer is what this is supposed to look like usually. So then we ask, what's wrong with Bruce? We're getting close to the comics, aren't we? But put away your excitement, because the show never follows up on this intrigue. I won't dwell on it much more, but I've already mentioned that Emil Blonsky, Abomination, is brought into the She-Hulk show as more of a joke. But importantly, his character and themes are modified to adapt him toward Jennifer's story and arc. And this is fine, it's fine. But it's just not as interesting. And there's nothing wrong with modifying a character to suit their new purpose. It's only bad, in retrospect, when you regard what you're losing. You're trading a filet mignon for a peanut, and you're allergic to peanuts. Do you see my problem? Not only is this MCU Hulk worse, both less interesting and less meaningful, but Marvel's also already used the potential plot lines that could have saved the character. There are very few remaining opportunities to improve him. Not none, mind you, because there are some great Hulk comics. Let me ask you something. You remember Planet Hulk? Well, during that comic, he didn't know it, but Hulk conceived a son. There was some magical nonsense. There's something called the Old Power. It laid an egg. Anyway, Scar is the son of Hulk and a warrior with crazy magic powers, and she died. And now, Scar was literally grown from the crust of his home planet as its womb. He can transform just like his father, and when he comes to Earth, he goes on a rampage. It's neat. You know, he's made from the same explosion that killed his mother, formed from the soil of his planet, inheriting the strife of its new political discord. Scar wants to kill his dad. He's a barbarian, a violent upriser who fights to protect his people and planet at all cost. When confronted by Silver Surfer, he held hostage the galaxy. If you take my planet, I'll make Galactus hungrier, and so turn him loose to ravage countless others. This is a disgustingly evil act of spite. Instead of being the sacrifice for others, he's spitting an act of defiance. They teleport him to Earth, and the sacrifice is made for him. Once landed, Scar seeks out his father to fight him. The thing is, Scar is mindful, not stupid. He's savage, yes, and he's a teenager, even worse, but he doesn't just attack people without reason. He knows his father as the freedom bringer and the destroyer, the one who commanded order on a planet that was broken, and he feels that Hulk's quest for vengeance led him off the planet that actually needed him. Scar blames Hulk for the death of his mother and the destruction of his home. Scar fights other heroes who keep him at bay, and the Hulk isn't hiding either. Several people work very hard to ensure Hulk does not meet Scar. But finally, they meet anyway, and we wonder what will happen. And this entire time, the heroes are worried sick about the devastation that the two will bring in their clash. Scar has Hulk's might and also his mother's powers too, and he's savage and cunning. He'll be a threat, and we're so worried about what lengths he'll go to get his revenge. I don't have anywhere else to put this, but look at how funny Wolverine's face is. He just tries fighting Scar, and he's like, oh no! Hulk easily beats Scar into submission. Yes, they cause a mayhem. A nuclear power plant has to be stabilized after they make a fissure. Scar helps because he is kind at heart. He just hates Hulk. And in the end, Hulk stands over his son with fists clenched. How could he do this to his own kid? And this isn't the end, either. Scar doesn't forgive. But this isn't just about him. Bruce has the chance to be a father, a good one. He has a chance to fail, like Brian before him, and he is terrified. Scar does still hate his father, but he also recognizes that this is a complex situation, that his father isn't Bruce. To Scar, his father is specifically the Hulk who was on planet Sakaar. You don't need to remember the names. The point is that this son tangles up all the things we know and love about the character. Scar sees Hulk as different from Bruce, but Bruce sees Scar as his own child, and therefore seemingly accepts the notion that Hulk is, if not him, part of him. Scar is a chance to bring it all back, to finally confront Bruce and Hulk and make something beautiful. Oh, what? Oh, they've already introduced Scar. Oh my god, I totally forgot about it, because it was like just a little joke at the end of She-Hulk. Huh. Bummer. Okay, yeah, then I guess there's nothing. There's literally nothing then. Okay, my bad. Yeah, forget all that. My bad. The point of this video is just to say, Hulk is cool. You should like him, and you should check out some of his comics. He's a monster, but he's a protector who's angry that he was born to be a weapon against his will. And the MCU has pacified this Hulk, integrated him into Bruce's default nature, and provided the character acceptance and love and stability. Bruce teaches at a college. Nobody's frightened of Hulk. He's a hero. Hulk is cool because he's a metaphor for abuse and how it isn't just a cycle of one person to the next, but instead how it feels in the chest of a victim that warps them into something monstrous, despite the fact that no warping actually occurs. Hulk is a personified tumor, abuse, a disease that predisposes you to anger and then makes you guilty when you feel it. But the MCU doesn't care about Banner's childhood. Look at him throughout all these movies and tell me he has any baggage from before he first turned green. The MCU Hulk was a little scary, but with love and acceptance, he's become boring. And in real life, that would be the dream. But I wish we just got to see any of that growth affecting Bruce at any point, rather than it all happening off screen. And now that we're here, there's really no way to return to those formative developments and show how cool the character should have been. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing or something. I'll see you later.